Howard Tennant, your host for this program. Water. It's something that we seldom think about. Yet every day we shower, brush our teeth, make coffee with this magical ingredient. We Canadians have a great deal of fresh water, yet it isn't always located where we want it to be. Canadians have been ingenious in utilizing some old methods and some new technologies to manage and control this most vital resource. This program is about water management and irrigation, how it works and how it's used. Some controversial problems and some possible solutions will be presented. Its impact on future generations, both here in Canada and globally, will be detailed. Recently, the University of Lethbridge hosted an international conference addressing the major issues on water management and irrigation. Some of the key issues presented at the Irrigation Research and Development Conference, or IRDC 90, were sustainable development, efficiency of water use, and regional and global climate concerns. Perhaps one of the most important points brought out at IRDC 90 was the recognition that water is a valuable, limited resource. Water is one of our most valuable resources. We enjoy it in many ways: fishing in a stream, swimming in a lake, or sitting under shaded trees nourished from underground water. The abundance of fruit and vegetables from farms to our homes, and the produce and meat we eat, are highly dependent on water. Most human beings assume there is an ongoing supply of water where they live. But there are many populated areas of the world where water management is essential for continued survival. We often think of countries such as Egypt, India, and Australia as needing water management. Where it's true, they obviously do require water management, there are areas closer to home that are also dependent on water management and irrigation. Areas such as California, Nevada, Texas, Colorado. But we can come closer to that. The population growth of Southern Alberta was largely due to irrigation. In fact, settlement of this area prior to irrigation was very, very hard.
Father and I arrived here in April of 1918. The town of Brooks is about 200 people, quite a few empty houses, and it was a dry year. It had been dry in 1918 and it had been a dry winter. There's no moisture in the prairie in 1918. And we had a contract, we made a contract with the people below us, because the one of the men had a large tractor and a big plow. He was going to break 100 acres for us at $6 an acre. Well, he came up with this tractor, and the land was so dry that he couldn't get the plow in the ground. So he had a 4-bottom plow, we took one bottom off, and I stood on the plow, and the owner took the tractor. We went up and down the field, and we could break about 2 inches. That's all we could do. We changed plowshares 3 times a day. We couldn't get the plow in the ground. Couldn't get it. It was just so, it's like plowing pavement. It was that dry.
Without irrigation, many farmers went broke. In the Brooks region, almost half of the original settlers lost their land, their homes, and their dreams.
The first man to come in, the fellow broke our land. His wife almost went berserk because they lost all the money they had. She went out of her head, so he just picked his family up in 1924 and went back to Minnesota. And I was renting his farm, and I agreed to buy it, and I took over his contract. Well, I was so badly in debt that I had a heck of a time. And I wanted to stay. I'd just been married a couple of years. I wanted to stay here. I wanted to fix it so we could stay and prosper.
But the soil, although fragile, held promise of rich fields filled with crops for human and livestock consumption. And with the ingenuity and tenacity of the settlers, rivers were diverted, storage and conveyance systems put in place, so that it was possible to survive and grow on the dry, parched prairie. Irrigation is an age-old process used by ancient civilizations in Egypt and India. In Alberta, early systems, although rudimentary, were effective in producing more bountiful crops than without irrigation.
The irrigation at that point, of course, was all contour ditches. Each quarter section had a delivery point, and whatever land was lower than that was the land that you irrigated, and many quarters didn't have a lot of irrigation on them. The home quarter that we're on right now had about 65 acres, and the rest of it, of course, was too high. So the contour ditches were put in, and flood irrigation was all that you had. The shovel and the boots and the canvas dam.
Today, water from the river source is stored in reservoirs. From these points, the water is channeled into a network of canals which flows through the irrigation districts. The water in the canal system is monitored on a regular basis and distributed on request to each farmer during the irrigation season. The two most common methods for present-day irrigation in Alberta are flood irrigation and sprinkler irrigation. For flood irrigation, the water is supplied by an irrigation ditch at a high point on the edge of the farmer's land. He takes it from there and moves it to his own ditches for flooding the land for his crops and animals. Sprinkler irrigation involves pumping the water out of a small reservoir on the farmer's land and distributing it through sprinklers called center pivots or wheel rolls. Each section of wheel roll must be moved to the next pump spot every 8 to 12 hours continuously until the end of the irrigation season. The pivot has the advantage of having one central pump source and rotates around a center point like the hands of a clock. Irrigated land can make a big difference to agricultural production. As much as 4 to 5 times the amount of crops can be produced on irrigated land versus dry land. In addition to a much larger crop yield, crops such as carrots, peas, and table corn are also possible through irrigation. In Alberta, 4% of the crop land is under irrigation and produces 20% of the agricultural production.
Irrigation lets us do many things we couldn't possibly do. For instance, the livestock development in the area is so dependent on water. Water for the livestock, if nothing else, and water for the crops that you need to support the livestock. Water for the specialty crops in the area.
Irrigated agriculture provides directly for the red meat industry here in Southern Alberta. This is perhaps the largest industry and is a growing industry. It is so for 3 reasons. 1, a good and steady supply of drinking water the year round. 2, a climate suitable for raising cattle. And 3, a good supply of feed barley, which is essential.
Irrigation is sometimes viewed as having a detrimental effect to the land through poor management of water by its users. IRDC 90 urged both farmers and scientists to develop policies and incentives for increased efficiency in the use of irrigation water. The improvement of on-farm practices can increase the efficiency of water use, which has a positive environmental effect. Excess water, or spill water, is being used for other purposes, such as the creation of wildlife habitats and recreational facilities.
Well, I think we're going to see the irrigation community and water management capability in Southern Alberta utilized to generate much better wildlife habitat in future. I think you'll see a lot of multi-use projects, a lot more recreation development using the water resources in Southern Alberta. I think the irrigation community recognizes that's a necessity, and the general public would like to see the irrigation community offer those better facilities.
We always hear the negative things that irrigation causes, salinity and the problems that may occur from that. But I think one of the things irrigation does offer is the chance to reclaim some of those lands. Without irrigation, you're not going to be able to leach some of the salts out of some of the soils, and that aspect of reclamation isn't there without irrigation. So I think as we get to know more about irrigation, as we do more research and demonstration over the years, I firmly believe that irrigation will have a very positive effect on the environment and will become essential if some of the global trends that are happening continue to occur. We'll need them to sustain our everyday life in this part of the world.
Concern for the positive and negative effects on the environment has become a major issue. But what constitutes a positive and what constitutes a negative? And how does something that seems to be a negative now become a positive for future generations. In the past, concerns have been expressed that wildlife habitats were being destroyed by irrigation. These concerns were addressed by a panel of environmental scientists at IRDC 90. The panel recommended that both irrigators and water managers take steps to protect natural areas and to create and enhance habitat as part of ongoing water management programs. Such enhancement of habitats for species like mule and white-tailed deer, antelope, ground squirrels, coyotes, and rabbits is already occurring on the southern prairies as well as other areas of the world. Waterfowl are found in abundance in irrigated areas. Birds such as the Canada geese, ducks, hawks, and owls, along with a multitude of shorebirds. A pelican sanctuary has been developed on the largest reservoir in southern Alberta, and the pelicans, once an endangered species on the prairies, have since multiplied greatly.
Water in southern Alberta in irrigation is very critical, especially for both upland birds and for migratory waterfowl, because under the drought conditions that we're looking at right now, there is no other water in southern Alberta available for wildlife, for breeding, or even for migration. And that's a pretty big step from the parklands down into 1,000 miles into the United States before you reach water. You have to have some resting and staging areas. And irrigation supplies a very, very important part of the whole migration program at the present time. And of course, it's our hope that not only can we maintain the wetlands that we presently have, but increase them.
Irrigation is a positive, I wouldn't say negative, because all we have to do is look at southern Alberta from Trans-Canada Highway to the south. Without water, it would be a desert. Lethbridge wouldn't be 60,000 populated city. Probably would be about 12. And that's improvement. That's irrigation. Wildlife. We are creating wild habitats around our lakes and our canals. And you can come to Brooks area, the EID, Eastern Irrigation District, and you can see what they're doing for wildlife. We had a tour here, and we saw gosling with wild geese floating, swimming in the lake. Beautiful. And they tell us that we destroy it. We don't destroy nothing. We improve things. And I believe that we have to make sure that we educate the farmer, including myself, that we do not waste water and do not destroy our land. We farm the proper way, and then we'll leave the land in a better shape than we received it from our dad.
Recreation areas have also been developed in the form of camping and picnic areas, swimming, boating, sailing, and other family sports. The world record for speed sailing was set on Stafford Reservoir in southern Alberta. Fishing, another popular southern Alberta sport, is made accessible through irrigation. Cool, clear waters are filled with pike, whitefish, rainbow trout, walleye, and perch. The abundance of fish throughout the canals and reservoirs has led to a prosperous fish plant in a small southern Alberta town. Irrigation has created rivers, lakes, and marsh environments, a minor miracle on the barren prairie. To maintain this delicate balance and ensure the most efficient and effective adaptation by multi-users, requires continued research and development by scientists and an increased awareness by the public in general.
Research and demonstration and development are just absolutely essential. You know, too often we spend a lot of money on infrastructure, and of course that's important, but I think commensurate with that we have to be looking at things that will intensify it and make it profitable for the farmer. I believe studies in irrigation scheduling, water use efficiency, plant breeding, crop rotational studies, crop development, especially crop development, things that will help make the farmer more able to cope with day-to-day life and to make money at what he's doing.
I think understanding is the main issue, and this needs to be something that happens to all of us from our youth into our mature years, and especially with our youth. I look forward to water and all of the things that it's used for and how it's used to be more clearly defined in our school system. Education, both of our youngsters and we who are a few years past the elementary school age, and in the professions and in the technologies. Education all the way up and down the line is going to have to come on much more strongly than it is now.
From an environmental point of view, from where we do see some changes, we're going to have to be a lot more careful. But we've got to look at the economics of the environment. It's not practical to consider the environment and ignore the economics. It's a case of we've got multiple objectives now in terms of agriculture, the environment, and economic viability. We've got to address all those, so we need a lot more coordination between people working together towards the long-term goals of maintaining a viable society, an economic society in this part of the world.
Water management means more than taking care of what we already have and developing better ways to utilize these systems. It also means taking care of the land that is not to be irrigated, preserving prairie land in its original form. There's a need to keep untouched areas of prairie land as a legacy to future generations. We should secure and reserve as crown land arid and semi-arid areas which could be left as nearly as possible in their natural state.
As far as irrigation is concerned, the direction is going to be toward more complex interaction between the various users of water with irrigation. Irrigation provides the means of transporting water to a lot of other people. We have a number of reservoirs, a number of canals, and more municipalities are relying on that water to supply their needs for their citizens in their cities and towns. We've got something like 8 million acres of irrigable land in southern Alberta, probably about 2 million acres worth of water. And so as we approach the limits of the water, it gets more and more complex. And now we're seeing more and more interests in the environment and recreational needs and so on. They'll all have to be interrelated, and this is happening.
As the population increases, demand for these lands will become critical. Even comprehensive and well-integrated water management schemes are projected to be inadequate to sustain the increase in population in Europe, Asia, and Africa.
Globally, I think we have a different problem in a sense, and that is, in much of the third world, there are true scarcities of water for just basic needs. By this I mean in Africa, India, you hear about people walking several kilometers a day just to gain water for their daily use. And so I think what we're going to probably find is that either water development will occur in the sense of having reservoirs near where these people are, or that water will actually become the drawing point for where people end up living. In other words, they will live near where sources of water are if the water cannot be delivered to them.
The future is uncertain. The Science Council of Canada has concluded that we are moving from a period of localized and relatively simple environmental problems to one of chronic, global, and extremely complicated problems where the issues of ecology and economic development are closely associated. The Irrigation Research and Development Conference recognized there are necessary safeguards to the future that Canada, as well as other countries, must adopt to ensure a continued supply of our most vital resource. We must strive for the compatible sharing of water by agriculture, wildlife, fisheries, industry, recreation, domestic, and municipal users. As Canadians, we must support ongoing research to ensure that we meet the needs of the present while protecting the ability of future generations to meet their needs. We must also recognize our water problems are of a global nature, and we must assume responsibility as leaders to resolve the critical water problems facing almost all parts of the world. Water shortages do more than affect the quality of human life. It affects our existence and that of the birds, the fish, the other mammals, and the plants. In parts of the world, we have seen that where there is not a sufficient supply of water, there are no crops in the field, and therefore no food on the table. The next time you reach for a nice cold glass of water, remember what it would be like if it were gone permanently, and then become part of the solution. We Canadians must learn to work together so that we can efficiently and effectively manage the use of our water for the benefit of our children's children and beyond.